Chapter 7. Signal Drift. They didn't leave together. That was understood without needing to be said. Jack finished what was left in the plastic cup and set it down on the small table between them. The fake plant behind Yani stood perfectly still, its leaves too clean to be real, too quiet to betray anything. The kind of witness you could trust. He looked at her once, long enough to register the tension she wasn't bothering to hide. Not fear, not exactly. Something sharper. Something that came from recognizing a pattern too early.
Same frequency,
She said. A statement, not a question. Jack gave a slight nod.
That's what bothers me.
She added.
They're not even trying to move it.
He understood that. Signals that didn't shift weren't careless. They were confident. Or they were bait. He didn't answer. There wasn't anything useful to say. Yani studied him for a moment, as if weighing whether he already knew more than he was letting on. Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't. With Jack, the difference had always been hard to measure.
Be careful who you pass it to.
She said. That almost earned a smile. Almost. She stood before the moment could stretch into something else. Something unnecessary. Jack stayed where he was, watching her go, committing the details to memory without admitting that's what he was doing. They had always been better at leaving than staying. Fremont Street swallowed them, second they stepped back outside. Noise, light, movement, too many people pretending they weren't being watched. They walked side by side for half a block, not touching, not speaking. Then, without coordination, they split, each taking a different current in the same river. Jack headed toward the quieter end, where the neon thinned and the crowds lost their purpose. His pace stayed steady, unremarkable. Just another man with nowhere specific to be. He found a narrow bar and slipped inside, more out of instinct than need. The place smelled like it had been open too long. A few people lingered at the counter, none of them interested in anything beyond their own glass. Perfect. He took a seat in the corner and pulled the folded page from his coat. The numbers stared back at him. Clean, structured, wrong. He didn't need the radio anymore. The signal was already captured. This part, the real part, happened in the quiet after. Jack smoothed the paper against the table and went over it again. Once for sequence, once for spacing, once for what wasn't there. Patterns began to surface, then slipped away again when he tried to hold them too tightly. Familiar rhythms hiding inside something deliberately unfamiliar. He leaned back slightly, eyes narrowing. Not new, he muttered, just disguised. That was worse. He folded the paper again, slower this time, as if it might change shape if he rushed it. Then he slid it back into his pocket. There was someone who needed to see this. Someone who understood old systems well enough to recognize when they'd been twisted into something else. Jack stood, left cash on the table, and walked out without ordering anything.
Yani didn't go back to the strip. She didn't go back to the airport either, not right away. She walked. That was how she thought best. Movement without destination. The city shifted around her, loud to quiet, bright to dim, until she found herself on a side street that felt almost normal. Almost. She stopped beneath a flickering streetlight and pulled a phone from her pocket. No messages. Good. She powered it off anyway. Old habits. A car passed slowly, headlights dragging shadows across the pavement. She watched it go, then turned and continued down the street. She had options. Too many. Rome was compromised. Atlanta was a waypoint. Nothing more. Vegas was already behind her, burning itself out in neon and bad decisions. She needed somewhere that didn't matter, somewhere no one would think to look. Yani smiled faintly. She knew a few places like that. By the time the sun started thinking about rising, they were already gone. Jack was on a plane headed east, the folded page still in his pocket, the weight of it heavier than it should have been. Somewhere ahead, a contact waited, a voice from the past that might still know how to listen. Yani was moving in the opposite direction, her path bending away from maps and schedules back into the spaces between things where she'd always done her best work. Neither of them knew exactly what they were chasing, but they both felt it, the shift, the interference, the sense that whatever was coming wasn't just another message to decode or another warning to pass along. This was something else, something louder, something final. And somewhere, on a frequency neither of them had found yet, a signal was waiting.